Hello. Today we are going to talk about UX because we're both frustrated by something. Justin, what frustrates you?
Fucking calendars are what frustrate me. I cannot believe that we are living in 2024 and the state of calendars is still it's still the way that it is. It is the most insanely broken system that we have to deal with on a daily basis, and everybody keeps trying to fix it and everybody keeps failing at it. It is incredible.
And how many calendars do you have?
I have right now 3 separate calendars that I use every single day to manage events on.
Yeah, I have four. And it's a pain in the arse. That's the best way to say it. And so we were just talking about like, hey, at least Calendly lets you subscribe multiple calendars for someone to schedule something, and then it'll auto block off on all of those. So
Yep.
that's neat, right? Here's the problem with like shared calendars is they don't update. So if you share an event from one to the other and then it changes on one, it doesn't change on the other. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
It freaking breaks all over the place.
That seems fundamentally broken.
There is a fundamental problem with the calendar structures and systems, and syncing calendars is a pain. And
Yep.
and to that point, we were just talking about permissioning, and it's like, so if you work in enterprise software, you have to deal with like rights and permissions all the time.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there is enterprise software that does all this. However, for normal plebs at normal companies,
Mhm.
dealing with this stuff is incredibly painful. So let's say that I need to go to the doctors, and I am like 40 something at this point, and I need to go get a physical. Do I necessarily want everybody to know that I'm going to go get a physical? Sure, I don't really care, but let's pretend I care.
Right.
Let's pretend that it's something I really don't want people to know about. I either have to put just a big block, right, on one calendar, and then put it on the other calendar, and then the other calendar, and then the other calendar, because all my calendars need to reflect when something is important.
Yes.
Um, that sucks.
It sucks, right? And the thing that's happening there is like your life is experienced as one solid narrative throughout the day, right? 8 to 9 a.m., 9 to 10 a.m., 10 to 11, 11 to 12. You don't experience your life in these like slices of context as if like, oh, the 10-11 hour, everything switches over to personal for an hour. And then I come back to my work for an hour. Like that's not how life works. Life is like super messy, super nuanced. You kind of like slide in and out of like work and family and friends and personal stuff and all of that. And that just happens throughout the day naturally as part of one single timeline. And then what we do is we try to represent that as these slices of timelines represented by context, these different calendars. And that's just, it's fundamentally not how life works. And the mental model of calendars doesn't, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so what you end up with is all these hacks that we're talking about, right? Oh, well, I'll put it on the block with OOO so no one sees it. And then I'll replicate it on my personal calendar with the actual details so I remember where the appointment is. And then OOO on the 2 calendars that I have to do, right? And I need to remember to update that on all 4 calendars should that appointment get changed or moved, right? Like extremely broken.
and and Calendly does a good job for scheduling, but it doesn't do a good job for just an event cross populating, right?
Right.
Because its job is just to make sure that you have an availability and you can get something scheduled. So I'm googling here while Justin's ranting, and there's a product called Calendar Bridge, and it apparently does a lot of what we're talking about. So I'm like,
Mm.
oh, this is pretty cool. And two two calendars is $4 a month. The next is $8 a month, and then you can sync up to 16 different connections. All right.
And here's like the problem. And maybe this is just part of an evolution, but honestly, calendars are one of the things that like makes me so insane about this because calendars are not like a new thing. It's not like 5 years ago, someone's like, guys, I've got this idea for a way that we could track days and like what we're doing on those days. And it's called a calendar. And like now we can innovate around this idea of a calendar. We have had calendars since the fucking beginning of time. And so here's the thing that is crazy to me is that like we are still trying to hack this system that should have been actually solved. And we get, okay, one quick rant here about this. We get into this pattern as technologists, as society, as whatever, of like getting like really okay with arcane configurations of things, and also at using these, I know, using like middleware to do what the software should be doing. So like this calendar bridge is like, I need now another piece of third-party software to put into this ecosystem of calendars so that all can work together to solve the fucking problem with the calendars in the first place. Sorry, this makes me so, it just makes me crazy. It makes me crazy. I don't know why. Calendars make me insane.
It doesn't actually make sense.
No.
It just doesn't make sense. The idea, like, so let's just hypothetical. Let's just pretend.
Beep, beep, beep.
Let's just pretend, right? Like if we were designing a calendar software, one, I think the calendar that the Hay company from Basic was work like that has a lot of neat features.
Yep.
But what it's missing is the idea of getting and populating events to other calendars, right? In a meaningful way. Because I think what people really need is a singular system of record.
Yes.
And if I had like my perfect calendar would literally be, it would be a calendar app, and it would be like this event, and it would have an icon for Outlook or Live for the two companies that I work with that use that. And then it would have this event as my personal with a little icon to show it comes from personal. And then it would and it would block all the time in all of the calendars and would only show the details in the appropriate calendar.
Yep.
But would all populate into the primary calendar system. And
there should only be one calendar.
There should only be one calendar.
You should not have multiple calendars. And you want to know why you have multiple calendars? Want to know why?
Because you work for the man.
No, because of email addresses.
Oh, for sure.
Because they're all based on email addresses. And because of the tenancy pattern, because of how you sign up for and manage calendars, because it is tied to email address. And email address is the contextual thing that like changes you from work to personal or whatever. That fundamentally is why this is broken.
Well, and because a lot of company shit shouldn't show up on your personal calendar. And a lot of your personal shit shouldn't show up on your so like there is a fundamental reason to have multiple calendars. The problem is I love the name Calendar Bridge, right? So like plug to Calendar Bridge. The problem is it hasn't been a fundamental bridge technology for calendaring. And there really should be. Like,
yeah, I mean,
and I mean, it could just be a JSON pattern that's like, this is what's exposed in an okay environment, and this is what's exposed in a not okay environment, and send the shit around.
I think that like the mental model is wrong. I don't think you should have multiple calendars. A calendar represents the passage of time during a day. There is one day, there is one passage of time. That is it. There's not multiple timelines that I'm living at one time. There is a single minute that is happening right now on Thursday, February 8th at 8:29 a.m. There should be a single representation of that piece of time. The events on the calendar should be specific to context. This is a work event. This is a personal event. And because of this is a work event, a personal event, a whatever event, it has certain rules and acts in certain ways because of that. But the fundamental idea that there are multiple places representing the same slice of time in real life is the fundamental problem of why it's broken. There is one timeline, and you should experience that one timeline singularly, not in this weird parallel universe.
Well, we finally get a chance to go back to a little bit of our AI rant yesterday, which I don't know if it was on camera or not, but it's the context that matters. And so that's why you have multiple calendars, because you have a work context and you do have a personal context, whether you like it or not.
Yes. And I would suggest that what we have done is that we have pinned the context on the wrong thing. We have thought about context in terms of the type of events that are happening on the calendar, when in fact the context is time.
See,
And
now
I think
I'm going to play Big Brother. I'm going to pretend to be Big Brother. I fundamentally disagree. And
let's go.
and the reason for that is the only thing I care about is your work calendar.
Yeah.
The only
No,
thing
that's not true, and I will prove to you why that's not true. But keep going.
the only thing I care about is your work calendar.
Yep.
You could have 50 things in your private calendar that I never want to see in my work calendar context. The only time I want to see an event that is personal on the work is if you're truly taking time off and you're unreachable, right? Because there are things that happen. There's passages of time that are acceptable. Like, hey, I'm going to plop in that the plumber is showing up from 2:30 to 3:30, right? That doesn't actually have to be in my work calendar if I'm working remotely. That's actually just a nod for myself.
I actually don't agree with that. And I'll tell you why. Because of other people scheduling time on your calendar without you knowing. Because the way that events get on my calendar is people just look and see when I'm available, and it just plops on. And like, I don't even know what I'm getting invited to until I look at my calendar that day. And the reason why you care about the personal stuff is because every day from 1:45 to 2:15, I ride my bike to school to pick up my kids. That means that you cannot schedule a meeting from me from 1 to 2 p.m. But that is a personal blocker in a work context, which is why you have, and the point is that it is an interruption in the single narrative flow of time. That different events and different things that happen affect that single flow of time, but it is one flow of time. You can't meet with me at 1:45 on my work calendar, but not meet with me at 1:45 on my personal calendar. There is one flow of time. There is one 1:45, not two of them. And that is the problem.
Yeah.
I'm
sitting here realizing, by the way, that I have a fifth calendar. This is awful.
It's awful because I think the way the calendars have evolved, and think back to paper calendars for a second. All right, let's all take a trip back to the 1980s and the 1990s when we all had paper calendars. Remember the big desk calendars, the big ones that like took up your whole desk, right? It was like in the middle of the desk, the big old like whole month view, and the boxes are this big that you write everything in, right? What did people do with those calendars? I'll tell you what they did. They wrote in different colors to represent different contexts of events. I'm going to write my personal stuff in red. I'm going to write my work stuff in blue. I'm going to use green for these other things. They use signifiers to show on a single calendar the different contexts for each event. And that works really, really, really well. But the problem is because of the account-based nature of how we manage calendars, and because accounts tend to be separated by context, work, personal, blah, 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 it necessarily fractures the experience into these like parallel slices of time, which fundamentally breaks the metaphor. I want to like run out of this room right now and like go run somewhere to like fucking like fix a calendar. I don't know where I go to do that. I just have all of this energy that I want to go like fix this problem. And I can't fix the problem because it's like a society problem. It's like we have all just learned wrong how to do this. We have to like reteach everybody calendars. And it really is never going to get fixed, because the only way it gets fixed is if this gets fixed by Apple, by Microsoft, because the default calendar in your machine is what people are going to run their life by. And that is account-based, which means it's always going to be segregated, which means we are just, this is it. This is as good as it fucking gets. Good night. Goodbye. Out. I can't live in this world. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, like it's a problem.
It's a problem.
It's a problem. And I think people end up solving this problem the more calendars you have, like the more time that gets sucked into it until eventually you have a person to handle your calendar for you, which
Can you?
ironically is, I think, how we started talking about some of those, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
it's a pain in the butt.
Like, so now I have to hire somebody to make up for the broken metaphor. Are you kidding me? Like, I might as well not have calendars. I might as well hire somebody and be like, can you just keep track of everything for me? And just when I get an email, you email him back and be like, he's not available at that time. Like,
Oh,
why
okay.
would I
So
even use a calendar?
I mean, there have been companies that have attempted to do this with email, and there's the idea of like, you're gonna love this. Some people should be allowed to schedule shit for me,
Mm-hmm.
and other people should ask for permission to schedule shit for me.
Mm-hmm.
Everything comes in already as a presupposition that you're going to say yes, and it's just waiting for the yes or no. But to borrow the analogy of swipe left or right, it would be really handy if shit came in and you're like, you know what? No, no.
Right.
Before it really even shows up on the calendar,
Like a pre-request.
like a pre-request,
Save
because
the date.
um, which you do for weddings, right? Like
Right.
are
That's
you
exactly what you do. Yeah.
um
That gets exacerbated also, right? When you are invited to a meeting that has multiple people on it. And
oh
now it's like, because there's actually God, this is fascinating. There's actually like a weird hierarchical dependency here, right? Because if you think about it, let's say somebody calls a meeting and we're going to discuss some UX stuff, right? And we're going to look at a designer, blah, 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 whatever it is. And they invite me because I'm the designer, and they invite one of the stakeholders, and they invite an engineer, right? So it's four of us being invited to this meeting. Now, what if I can't come? If I can't come, the whole meeting can't happen because it's all about what I'm doing. But the
yeah.
problem is that invites assume that everybody's the same level of importance. It doesn't assume that if I can't make it, we need to reschedule. But if
Well,
somebody else can't make it,
that's technically not true. If you're
the
using,
optional tag.
yeah, I was gonna say there, and because you deal with Fortune 500, you do see this. They
Yeah.
absolutely put people on the right line. There's a
What do you mean
required
right now?
an outline, an outlook. There's like a required versus an
Yeah.
optional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. For sure.
they
For sure.
they
For sure.
absolutely put these people
Yeah.
are required, these people are optional.
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
you start scheduling meetings with 10 or 15 people, someone's
There
not
it
going to
is.
send.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that actually brings to me what part of what caused this conversation was like, hey, trying to coordinate 3 or 4 people's schedules when you don't have access to them. It is
Right.
actually amazing to me that there isn't the idea of um an automatic method to say compare all the calendars right now. Yes, you can do it inside Gmail inside of a company. Yes, you can do it inside Outlook inside of a company. But cross company, it is painful as
Can't do
hell.
it. Can't do it. You have to use an intermediary like Calendly.
And then like it's a pain in the butt because now you have to schedule a Calendly link for 15 people,
Exactly.
including people outside of your company potentially, because the Calendly link only works if everyone in that company agrees to the same time and then looks at your availability. But
Yes.
when you talk about like 3 people from one company, and by the way, like I work as a fractional like consultant, right? So every time I deal with something, there's 3 or 4 different parties.
Always.
Um, there's me, there's the company I'm representing, and then there's usually at least 1 or 2 other people. Now you start talking about like, okay, it's a 4 to 5 person meeting, and it's got 3 different companies involved, and the scheduling is just awful. So
Yep.
this is why you end up, I'm convinced this is why we end up with so many standing meetings, because that's the only way you can get it on the calendar.
Okay. I have a whole thing about standing meetings that I thought about yesterday. Oh, I wrote this down. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I actually wrote down something to talk to you
I
about
think I
that.
wrote this down on a different machine. Shit. Um, yeah, I think standing meetings are actually a fundamentally broken concept, actually. I think. But that's a
But for the
whole,
record, I am all, so a part of my consulting is about cadences, right?
yep.
And so there's a daily, weekly, monthly, and quarterly cadence. That's the normal business cadences.
Yep.
I do believe there should be standing weekly, monthly, and quarterly meetings. The quarterly are almost impossible to schedule as a standing basis, so you end up having to schedule those one-offs. But the purpose of the meeting has to be extremely tightly defined. The agenda of the meeting has to be extremely tightly defined. And there has to be a facilitator that is incredibly detail oriented in terms of moving it forward. I did this with one of my clients, and they had like this rambling 2-hour meeting. And after we implemented the process, it moved to a 30-minute meeting. They got everything done that they did in the 2-hour meeting in 30 minutes just because they followed a process, right?
Yeah, right.
But I generally hate the whole idea of like some random person getting up and just talking and pontificating during a meeting, which is odd because that's exactly what we're doing right now.
Well, yes, but this is not a meeting.
I was just like, oh shit, like we're really talking about like, but this is what people do during meetings. They'll just rant for an hour about calendars.
Of course, absolutely. Here's my, I have a theory about standing meetings, and this is a theory that like came up in yesterday. I thought about this. So this is not fully baked. So there may be like some real problems with what I'm about to say. But I actually think that especially weekly cadenced meetings in a product development world slow down process and progress.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. Because I think what happens is you actually get the inverse effect of whatever law it is that, you know, like the whatever the bandwidth law is, like everything will expand to fit the pipe, right? Basically, right? I think the converse, there's a version of the converse that is true with standing weekly meetings, which is that work will slow down to the point where it can support the weekly meeting cadence at a minimum, which means if I'm meeting to show you a piece of work next Wednesday, and it is right now Thursday of the previous week, I'm probably not working on that thing until Monday or Tuesday because I don't need to have it done until Wednesday. And so the team is actually going to slow down to the cadence of the meetings because they don't have a reason to speed up. And the meeting schedule actually drives the shipping frequency. And unless you have a daily meeting, that's the only way to deal with it. But daily meetings, I kind of hate because they take up so much time.
I hate daily meetings.
And they're interruptive. And so,
by the way, I think what you're talking about to some degree is the sprint and Scrum, the whole agile process, right? And there are a lot of ceremonies in it, and they take up a lot of time, like a frustrating amount of time. But they can be useful. I don't want to debate that. What we're talking about right now happens to be in the context of a third-party firm working with another company. And I think that's actually important. The context here is critically important. Because there's something called drift. And what we realized when we worked with all of our clients and third parties was if we went too long without a cadence meeting, there was a drift in expectations that which naturally meant we went off course. And so you can debate whether it's weekly versus biweekly or, monthly, but you have to have that meeting to prevent excessive drift. And so I would say that you have to have the meeting. Otherwise you will have excessive drift. And the worst thing,
keep going. I've got an answer to this.
The worst thing that can happen is that you spent let's say it's a 2-week cycle instead of a 1-week cycle. You spent a whole second week on the wrong thing.
I would suggest that you should probably have more. Okay, I don't know that I mean this.
You're like, wait a minute. No.
What I'm about to say, I don't know that I fully mean, but the intent behind it. I don't think that weekly meetings should be replaced by void. I think they should be replaced by other meetings that are scheduled ad hoc. I don't think you should have standing weekly meetings, but you should have weekly meetings.
So
They should be ad hoc, and they should be based on the cadence of the needs, not
perfect.
a artificial cadence of the
Love
calendar.
it. So now we're getting back to the calendar concept, because
Right.
the purpose for the weekly meeting is it's impossible to schedule across multiple organizations ad hoc easily.
Exactly. So it's a hack. It's another fucking calendar hack that actually hurts the product development process. Fucking calendars. Again, ruining everything.
I appreciate that you think that.
We're gonna have to put an explicit warning on this
yes.
on this episode.
I mean, it could be F-ing calendars.
I think that's the title.
And it's not going to go into AMAI. It's going to say like UX Rants.
UX Rants is the new playlist.
It's the new playlist, and this is a fun one. So yeah, my personal preference is to have an hour blocked on a weekly basis for that kind of meeting early in the week, with the goal of being done in 30 minutes or less.
Mhm.
But having an hour blocked, because it's a pain in the ass to like not have an hour blocked when you need an hour. So explicitly stating that 30 minutes is the goal, but having the hour scheduled. And then, and this is how you get it to half an hour. That Friday, let's say we do it on Monday. On Friday, a pre-meeting agenda goes out with all the different discussion points, so people can be caught up and made awares and read through it. And then you're not spending an hour with 5 people on the meeting.
For sure. The Amazon thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's essentially the Amazon thing.
Yep.
It's just, I find the pattern to work really, really well, and you can reduce the amount of overall time spent. But
yeah.
But calendars.
I mean, I think that's true. I think the problem is, like, fundamentally, here's where I think it slows down product development timelines. Let's say on Monday we meet, right? And we say, okay, guys, we're going to solve this problem. We got to like release this feature. Let's come up with an idea how that feature is going to work, right? And let's review it at the next meeting. Okay. That's on Monday. On Tuesday, we figure out how the feature is going to work. Now, we have to wait until Monday to talk about that.
Yeah. See,
and we have 5 days now of product development time that we just wasted because we are now a slave to this recurring meeting schedule. And it's like, well, if we talk about it too early, then we won't have anything to talk about the recurring meeting. So we should save it for the recurring meeting, because that's when we talk about these things. And that's the problem.
Oh yeah, no,
everything slows down to the cadence of the meetings.
The only way this works is if you do have some shared Slack or Teams or Discord channels. Because like that shit should pop up immediately. Yep. And it should be, hey, do you want to discuss this ad hoc? Or are you comfortable with this decision? Can we make progress? You can't slow down. So I like, if you're only relying on, by the way, email does not work for this shit, guys. It just doesn't work. Email doesn't work. I do agree. If you're talking like the meeting is the only communication pattern, then you have a problem. You do have a problem. It's got to be quicker.
Yep. And so then I would submit to you that if you follow this bouncing ball down the trail, that if we, because I 100% agree, I am a insanely huge advocate for chat-based communications all the time with an understanding of asynchronous as the rule, right? Like that, drop messages into a chat to you. I don't expect that you're going to respond immediately. I expect that you will respond at some point, right? Within a reasonable amount of time, but I don't expect that you're like standing there waiting to respond to me. But we should have constant flowing communication on some kind of chat app all day long, all the time. So let's just follow this logic here. On Monday, we have a meeting and we say, let's figure out how this feature is going to work. On Tuesday, we figure out how the feature is going to work. On Tuesday afternoon, I send a message and a quick sketch and I say, here's how we think the feature is going to work. And you say, yeah, that sounds good. Why do we have recurring meetings now? We're making the decisions as we go. We are making the recurring meeting not have to exist because we're communicating better in the interim. Recurring meetings are a hack for shitty communication.
Yes, and they're still necessary.
I don't think they are.
Well, here, but
I think some are. Quarterly, I get you. That does make sense.
Quarterly is non-negotiable.
Yeah,
I would posit monthlies are non-negotiable. Weeklies are negotiable potentially, given the organization. And I think a lot of this has to do with the size of the project, and the number of teams that are going on and the coordination that has to go across those teams.
Mhm.
If you have a very small team, maybe the weekly is not necessary. But if you're managing 3 or 4 different teams and there's interdependencies, you do have to play some wrangling.
You do, but why is that wrangling not done on an ongoing basis, day to day, which it should be, instead of saving it all up for every week that we have to like now pay back the debt of communication for the previous 5 days on this one weekly meeting?
So I think you're seeing it one way. I'm seeing it the exact opposite, right? Which is, hey,
Okay.
you're accruing debt and you're paying it down, right? During
Yeah.
the meeting. What I'm
Yep.
saying is you should be avoiding accruing debt, right?
Yes.
Over the course of the week. However,
Correct.
sometimes you have to use your freaking credit card, right? And sometimes you have to use your credit card.
Sure.
And so what you have to do is when the card is necessary, you then have to discuss what the card cost during that meeting. And
Sure.
priority shifting sometimes can't be done asynchronously.
That's fair.
And
And I would say
priority
you call a meeting to do that. And you
and
say, let's do it tomorrow on Thursday, not wait until fucking Monday. Because, and let me tell you why. Let me tell you the only way this works. By the way, this will never work. This will never happen. Recurring meetings are going to be a thing until the end of fucking time, right? But here's the thing. This only works if there are no recurring meetings on anybody's calendar. Because the reason you do recurring meetings is to save the date, save the spot so it doesn't get hard to schedule stuff on a regular basis. Fucking balloons. And right. And so like that's the reason why you do it. But imagine if your calendar was just empty every day at 9 a.m. and then it just started to fill up as needed. Then you have all the time to do these ad hoc things, and that is not a problem. We don't have to have the hack because we don't have the problem, but that requires that no one have standing meetings, which will never happen. So this is like a world that just is
and I think this is where it actually boils all the way back to the original context. And this is why standing meetings matter. Because your presupposition there is that nobody has anything on their calendars, including the personal shit. A standing meeting allows you to be prepared for a particular time on a particular date.
Right.
Without standing meetings, you have no clue who's going to schedule their dental appointments on a given point in time, which is why, by the way, I'm okay with having a standard meeting block and then not having the meeting. And that is something that really blows people's mind.
That is right. So that's interesting. Hold the time, but we don't need to always use the time.
Which is what I said. Like my normal pattern that I usually get to is schedule an hour, use 30 minutes.
Right.
I've had schedule an hour, use 5 minutes. And
for sure.
That's amazing when it's like, all right, guys, here was the pre-meeting review. Here's everything. Somebody has to take all of the notes from all the different Slack conversations, the Jira notes, the Confluence, everything gets compiled. Here's everything that happened over the course of the week. Anything we need to discuss? No, that covered everything. Have any of the priorities shifted? Nope. And that was the meeting.
Yep.
5 minutes.
Exactly.
5 minutes.
And but this is why.
But it had to be scheduled for that to be able to be possible.
Interesting. I mean, yeah. What's interesting is like there's this weird psychological thing that happens that when a meeting time is scheduled, everybody feels like they need to use it and they need to use all of it.
So you did the bar camps, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's this camp, there's this conference called Bar Camp where the meetings are ad hoc, right? But there's a rule for Bar Camp. Do you remember the rule?
The rule of 2 feet.
Vote with your feet.
Yep.
If you're not happy, leave.
Yep.
And that is something that everyone should be empowered to do. If the meeting isn't appropriate for you, get the fuck out and do something.
Leave productive. And go do some work.
Yeah.
You don't need to be hanging out.
And I know people don't want to be rude and everyone wants to attend meetings because they feel important. I feel the exact opposite way. I don't want to be in a meeting unless I have to be in a meeting. Right. And we empowered people to leave meetings and we suggested people leave meetings. And it wasn't a rude thing. It's like not that you're not important. It's that we have everybody that's necessary for this decision. And this is the only way this works. And we take good notes. So even though you're not here, you get to read the summary of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yep. By the way, guys, there's AI tools that will do this. Use them.
Yeah. We can actually debate the AI tools for meetings because those are after the fact. Typically, the AI tools are after the fact and not during, and that's a real problem for AI.
That's fair.
For meeting cleanliness. A real problem because, yeah. Gosh, this is just so much fun topic.
There's a lot we can explore here.
But yeah, so I would posit to you to flip it around. Have the weekly meeting. Try to get the weekly meeting to be done in 5 minutes instead of an hour.
And try to build incentives for that somehow. Make it disincentivize using full hours for meetings. You should only use it if you absolutely have to.
Yeah. So with one of the companies that I worked with when we did this, we had 7 different blocks for the meeting agenda, and there was a time limit on each one.
Yeah.
And so if every block went to its max, it was an hour. But the goal was that each block, you tried to end those as fast as each block as fast as possible.
Yep.
But it was strict, and part of it was you had to be strict. You had to be strict.
You have to be strict. You have to be prepared, right? Like
that's the real thing. People don't like to show up prepared to meetings, just like we don't like really prepare for these random rants.
We just like to show up and talk.
We just like to show up and talk. That's what people do at meetings.
Absolutely.
And that actually that's the reason people hate meetings.
Yeah.
If you enforce the Amazon styles, you have to prepare. The person who scheduled the meeting has to be really accurately well prepared. You would have a lot. That's the reason they do it. It's because you have less meetings.
Right. Here's my question. What if, so let's just say for a second, so the Amazon thing, we keep mentioning this, the Amazon thing is that, Jeff Bezos said that like when they have meetings, there's like a 5-page like overview of what the meeting's going to be about, all the summary, the background information, the decisions that have to be made, all that. And everyone's required. Actually, what happens is the first 30 minutes of the meeting is silent while everybody reads that. And then only then do people start talking about it, because we just dispense with all of the like bringing everybody up to speed, let them get up to speed on their own time, and then like actually be productive. Although he does do it at the beginning of the meeting, but I think there's also like a recommendation to read that before the meeting so you can come in and just start, right? If that is true, if you were giving people like a dossier, an agenda to read with all of the information and all the decision points that need to be made, then why are we having a meeting at all? Why is that not being done asynchronously in chat?
I love it because async sucks. Because async, you cannot get the same quality conversation as you can in person.
Depending on the conversation and depending on the people.
If you have to make a high fidelity decision,
maybe. It depends on the people, right? I have developed full products with one other person. Now, not a whole team. It's when you get a lot of people that it becomes problematic, right? But I've developed whole products and worked on whole products for several years, having had 0 meetings, doing it all via chat. And it worked great.
Sure.
And so you can do it, but I think maybe it's a function of team size, and I think it's a function of team composition and communication styles. Not everybody can operate in that environment effectively. In fact, very few people can, probably.
Async is a fantastic enabler. So when I say async sucks, I don't want people to think that I'm against async.
It is the speed enabler.
It is the speed enabler, but it is also a massive time suck compared to synchronous, because Justin likes to, party and start working at 2 a.m. Chris starts working. Chris works at 8 a.m. Right. And that's when he starts his work. And Bob is West Coast and he starts at 1 p.m. And now we have asynchronous decisions that go from Justin, where Chris puts something in, and the next person has to make his decision. And the next time we make a decision is 2 days later, because the cycle time of async can be really slow. Mm-hmm. It can be.
It can be.
True by the way, this is one of the reasons why Silicon Valley for so long, and by the way, coming back to this, they invest VCs. If VCs only invest in companies primarily, I'm not saying never, primarily invest in companies where everybody's in the same room. Why do you think that is? And it's because it is faster. You can't
It
argue
just
against
is, but you can't argue. It is faster.
it. It is faster. And
Everything we're talking about is a hack brought about by remote work.
it is. And but async allows you to have people in the Philippines or in Latin America that
Yep.
are a lot cheaper. So
Yep.
like I'm not arguing for async, but high quality decisions are made easier together. They're made easier with a whiteboard. And by the way, show me a whiteboard software that doesn't suck online.
All sucks.
They all suck compared to
All sucks.
physically grabbing a pen and drawing.
It's amazing. You're 100% correct.
And all of our best sales conversations with our clients were with a whiteboard where we sat and we drew for hours on end.
Yep. Where the best work gets done.
And that's why we had whiteboards for literally 50 feet, right? And it's because we could start here and end there.
Yep.
And
100%.
that does not happen. Even in, by the way, like I love infinite canvases. Infinite canvases don't have that same style.
No, and man, we need to probably wrap this up, but we should think about talking about this at some other point. There's a concept about embodiment in design and embodiment in problem solving and that kind of thing. And the idea being that like part of that idea, and I'm probably not saying it completely correctly, but is the idea that like decision making involves more than just your brain. Like your body in physical space moving around, right, actually is a really important part of thinking. It's not just all here. Your body actually helps you think. And I really do believe that when you're standing in front of a whiteboard with somebody in a room and you're moving your arms and you're walking around, you're making better, deeper decisions because you're involving your whole body. Whereas when you're in a canvas doing this with a mouse, you're not, because you're not engaging your full body, which means you're not using all your decision-making senses and apparatus.
Yeah. And so one, I love it. And you're right. We probably do need to end soon, but I think it can be so much faster for dropping shit in if you're on Figma or Miro or something like that.
Sure.
And you can have like this whole thing. But the thing is, you're actually not thinking when you do that.
Right.
You're using hacks to try to speed things up instead of actually like there's nothing like writing to require you to think. There's nothing like drawing. I say this all the time. Like sketching is the ultimate performance hack.
It's the ultimate thinking tool.
And when you sketch things out, it can be the shitty, like I'm not a gifted artist. Like you can put a shitty box and then put some stuff in there and it's still going to, people are invested in that process in a way they just can't be on a digital medium. And so, yes, I do think all of this is based on calendars. Some of this is based on remote work. And I think the reason for meetings, even virtually, is you at least get some of that intelligence back that you versus asynchronous. Some of it.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't change the fact that meetings are fundamentally a hack. They're fundamentally a hack. They're fundamentally a hack or poor communication.
I agree, but they're a necessary evil in a remote world. And so when we were all together pre-COVID, you know, we had 50 or 60 people in a building in Oldsmar. And when we needed something, everybody was there. Support department was there, training department was there, implementation, you know, sales, marketing, development, everybody, product. If we had questions, we walked from one cubicle to the other or from one desk to the other, and we had a conversation.
And more decisions by decision count got made that way than in meetings. Probably by 10 to 1.
A lot happened very fast that way. But you know what else happened? The ability to have that impromptu meeting that you're talking about. Because it's like, oh, I don't know. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Let's go. And we pulled into a conference room and we did shit.
Yes. Yes.
That's not possible in a remote world. That's not possible in an asynchronous world.
It can be, but it's very hard. That's why you have the huddle functionality in Slack. But I mean, it's very difficult to actually pull off.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this was fun. Tremendously off topic. But ultimately, hey, Microsoft, Google, somebody figure this shit out so we don't have to use 50 different tools. And because like calendars suck, people.
Calendars suck. Fix calendars.
That's the title of this show when you see it on YouTube. Fix the effing calendar.
Calendars. I'm going to get a bumper sticker on my car that just says fix fucking calendars.
Oh, man. Ciao.
All right. See you guys.